In this exercise, we're going to create a poster around the topic of symbolism of basic shapes. And we're going to use Illustrator to do this. And the content is really just a means to an end so that we can learn about the symbolism of basic shapes, but also so that we can learn how to use some of the tools in Illustrator to create this poster quickly and efficiently and still have the layout be very precise. So a couple of tutorials you're going to want to take a look at before you begin are listed right here. And these just teach you about the tools that we're going to be using in Illustrator, specifically the shape tool and the alignment and distribution tools. And what we're going to do is create a poster that lists the symbolism associated with, at a minimum, each of these basic shapes. We've also been provided with the content. So we're going to take a look at the content, and we can see that we've got some meaning associated with each of these shapes. We've got some that maybe weren't in the initial layout as well, but they'll work. So what we need to do next is move into Illustrator, but we've also been given some instructions on exactly what layout we should be using. So let's take a look at that really quickly. And we can see here, this is a diagram of the poster layout that we're going to have. Some of the colors are easier to see than others, but hopefully we can get this where we can see it pretty well. I'm going to zoom in a little bit after we talk about the top level of the poster, but what we're seeing here at the top is the black line is the size of the page. That's supposed to be 11 by 17. And our instructions also say that we need to have 1/8 of an inch bleed. That's represented in this red line right here. So what bleed is when we have a background color that goes all the way to the edge. If we want that color to extend all the way to the edge, because of the way this is going to be printed at a commercial printer, they're going to be printing this on a sheet that's bigger than 11 by 17, and they're going to cut it down to size once all of them are printed in a stack. And so in order to have the color extend all the way to the edge, we actually need to go past the edge of the page, and we need to add some extra color around the edge, just so that if the paper shifts a little bit during the printing process or the cutting process, there's not a white strip down the side of one of these edges here. Likewise, since the paper can shift when it's being cut or when it's being printed, we also don't want our content that's critical to the message of the piece that we're working on to extend all the way to the edge of the page either. And that is defined by having a safety area. We want to keep all of our critical text and image inside a safety area so that if the paper shifts, nothing gets cut off that's really important. And that's denoted by this blue dash line here. We need to have a 1/4 inch safety area on this. The rest of what we're seeing here is the content and then some specs to do with the content. So what we're seeing here is that the title should be at the top, it should be centered, and it should probably be bigger and bolder than the rest of the text on the page. And then there's some sort of introductory text here that describes the whole concept behind the poster and why we're making a poster. And that should also be centered, probably a little bit smaller than the title, and take place at the top of the page as well. And then we have each of our basic shapes. It's going to be positioned right here. Underneath that, there's going to be the name of the shape, and then there's going to be this paragraph of text that describes the symbolism associated with that shape. Now, here we can start seeing some of the lines that tell us how we should be laying this out. So these green lines have to do with alignment, and what this means is that this should be centered on the page for the top text here. And then we're also seeing that each of these shapes should be aligned along the bottom of the shape, and that the name of each shape should be aligned across the top of each shape. Across the top of the text. So that creates an even amount of space here. And also we're seeing from these lines that that space needs to be consistent on each row of shapes. So this amount of space between the bottom of this shape and the top of this text needs to be consistent across each one in the row, but also across each row. So that number needs to be the same across each one so that it looks consistent. Likewise, we need to see the same space between the bottom of the text, that is the heading of the shape, and the top of the paragraph that describes it. So that's what the letter B is, and that these all need to be consistent across all shapes as well. We also need to see that these need to be evenly distributed across the page. So it's not just these shapes, but these entire columns need to be aligned on center. So all of these as columns need to be aligned. And then each column needs to be evenly distributed across the space of the page. And each row, also denoted by the letter D, needs to be evenly distributed across the available space on the page so that everything is evenly laid out. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, it's somewhat of a complicated diagram just for what we're doing, but I'm going to walk you through the process of creating this and show you some ways that you can do this quickly and efficiently so that you don't have to spend hours upon hours working on it.